And before we kick things over to today's panelists, we are going to play for you a message from the Commissioner of OGS, Jeanette Moy.
Hello, I'm Commissioner Jeanette Moy, and on behalf of Governor Hochul and the New York State Office of General Services, welcome to the New York Gov Procurement Virtual Seminars. Thank you for joining us. This series of virtual seminars, hosted by OGS Procurement Services team, is similar to what has traditionally been presented during in-person New York Gov events. This is the first time that OGS is offering an interactive online program for Gov, and we believe it's an important way to expand access and share information about our programs. Here at OGS, we are piloting new ways to engage with our customers and the public by improving the services we provide and increasing accessibility, which includes meeting our customers where they are. And that's what we're accomplishing today with this series of seminars that you can actively participate from in your office or home. Thank you so much to our procurement team for all of your hard work in putting this program together. Gov was created to help all authorized users of OGS contracts, including state agencies and authorities, governments, colleges, school districts, and qualified nonprofit organizations learn about important procurement-related topics, from navigating OGS and contract reporter websites to best sustainable purchasing practices. Whether you're a procurement professional or new to purchasing through our contracts, Gov has a training program to help keep you abreast of changes and innovations. With a value of approximately $30 billion, our 1,500 centralized contracts are designed to help you save time and money, allowing you to focus on your organization's primary missions by eliminating the process of conducting your own procurements. Gov is our way of making sure you know how to leverage these contracts to the fullest extent possible and produce the best possible outcomes for the team. Through the state procurement process, Governor Hochul continues to promote economic opportunities for New York State certified minority and women-owned business enterprises and service-disabled veteran-owned businesses, small businesses, preferred sources, sellers of sustainable products, and food producers. Our governor is also committed to making state government accessible and easy to navigate. And that's what OGS is setting out to accomplish through these seminars with help from our partners at Empire State Development and our preferred sources. 2023 is turning out to be a transformative year for OGS. Just this year, we've adopted a 5-year strategic plan covering all areas of our agency's operations, including procurement. This plan outlines our strategy to advance Governor Hochul's vision for achieving the New York dream by focusing on transparency, service, and outcomes, and better serve all of you in this training program. In the coming years, you'll benefit from our efforts to modernize procurement systems, increasing speed, efficiency, accuracy, transparency, and accessibility of our centralized contracts, update our procurement website and training materials, and establish standardized lifecycle metrics for contract performance, leverage data to actively manage our contract portfolio, and provide better information to customers and vendors. Expand the use of state contracts by making the process easy for customers and for vendors. By making it easy to do this in state, OGS can foster competition, drive innovation, and deliver greater value for our authorized users and the public. Strengthen our processes for incorporating market analysis and vendor feedback into solicitation development, and improve communication with vendors throughout the contracting process. Leverage our procurement expertise to shape our services and develop contracts around the needs of our authorized users and partner agencies. And of course, last but not certainly least, help Governor Hochul's ambitious climate goals and leverage state procurement and purchasing power to advance those goals. This is our commitment to you. We will be transparent with our staff, customers, vendors, and the public, while promoting fairness within the contracting community through open competition, a level playing field, and efficiency. We will focus on our customers and our role in supporting their missions. We will deliver services and products that provide the best outcomes and value for the state. We will incorporate sustainability and equity into all of our work. We appreciate your participation in New York GovByU. We will continue to incorporate your input and feedback as we move forward with plans to modernize the state's procurement process, make it more user-friendly, and ensure that it's meeting your needs. Thank you again for joining our inaugural GovByU.
All right, I hope everybody enjoyed that wonderful message from Commissioner Moy. And now I'm going to turn things over to Jennifer Stafford, who will be the moderator for today's session.
Emily, thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the last session of GovByU 2023. We made it. I'm Jennifer Stafford, and I'll be the moderator for this session. I'm so proud to introduce today's panelists. I did some quick math just before we got in the room, and I made some slight guesses, and I estimate there's over 150 years of state service represented in total in our panelists today. Wow. We have panelists from Procurement Services and from the Business Services Center. From Procurement Services, we have Jill McCabe, who is our Director of Information Technology. And I was supposed to put my camera on, and I forgot. Let's all put our cameras on, shall we? Oh, you all are on. Great job moderating. Hi, I'm Jennifer Stafford. So in addition to Jill McCabe, we have Wendy Reitzel, who is our Director of Commodities and Services. And we have Joseph Better, who is our Assistant Director responsible for the IT Manufacturers Umbrella Team. We have Kailisha Davis, who is our Assistant Director responsible for the IT Distributor Umbrella, PBIS, and Telecom Contracting Teams. We have Melissa Gretton, our Assistant Director responsible for the Medical, Food, Furniture, and Temporary Personnel Contracting Teams. And we have Jamie Nussbaum, our Assistant Director responsible for the Road Materials, Office, and Education Contracting Teams. In addition to Procurement Services, we have our partners from the Business Services Center on the line with us. And we have Sue-Ann Hadley, who is the Buy Desk Manager at the BSC. And we have Phil Reed, who is the BSC Purchasing Manager. Okay, so as Emily mentioned, prior to our session starting, we accepted a number of questions, and we have crafted those questions into the PowerPoint that you have here. And now it's time for me to stop my video. So our first few slides will address the questions you asked for schools and local government. Jill McCabe is going to address the first school and local government question. And Jill, this goes over 3 slides.
Next slide.
Oh, next slide, please. Next slide, please. There's your slide, Jill.
Okay, so the question that came in was, what services do you offer to schools and local governments? Well, OGS Procurement Services establishes contracts for use by not just state agencies, but also for non-state agencies. There are over 8,000 entities registered with OGS that are eligible to use our contracts. We maintain over 1,500 non-construction contracts in our portfolio. Unlike state agencies, non-state entities follow general municipal law. These entities also abide by whatever policies and procedures their local government, board, or commission adopts. These entities can include municipalities, towns, counties, schools, police, fire departments, rescue squads, or even some cemeteries, to name a few. Next slide. If schools and local governments aren't able to find what they're looking for on centralized contracts, they have other options. Piggybacking on an existing contract. Well, this means that non-state buyers can receive the same services and commodities as the originating contract agency and at the same price. Cooperative purchasing is another option. This is when two or more local entities seek to purchase goods or services together, resulting in greater purchasing power and cost savings. Any city, town, village, county, fire or school district, BOCES, and even improvement districts can sign an intergovernmental cooperative agreement to develop and award a procurement together. For both of those options just mentioned, consider the cost savings. General municipal law does not require local governments to consider whether the contract will result in cost savings. However, buyers should perform a cost-benefit analysis before using this option. Any potential savings on the administrative expense that would be incurred if a local government initiated its own competitive bidding should be part of the decision-making. And finally, you can conduct your own procurement. This form of competitive bidding requires local entities to follow not only their own rules and regs, but that of general municipal law. Contracts may be awarded on the basis of either lowest bid or best value. Next slide. Local governments have access to all the same centralized contracts as our state agency customers. OGS establishes some contracts that are used mostly by non-state entities, such as school buses. Road salt is another that is heavily used by non-state buyers. OGS local customers also have access to procurement services and all the customer services staff, outreaches and trainings, just like GovBuy, and templates and tools that will help you run your procurements efficiently. Finally, purchaser notification service. Anyone who's involved in procurement should definitely be signed up for this free service. It notifies you via email when new contracts are awarded or updates to a current contract are being made. For example, when OGS is extending an award or an award is lapsing and no new award will replace it, you would find out by receiving a PNS email. Your office can sign up as many staff members as you'd like. In fact, we recommend registering more than one person so you don't miss any exciting OGS procurement news. Next slide.
Thank you, Jill. The next questions for schools and local governments will be addressed by Joe and Jamie, and you just have 4 slides. So the question is, what is the best way for a school district or other municipality to purchase annual software subscriptions? Going out to bid for such systems every 3 years is disruptive. Is standardization an option?
So the manufacturer's umbrella contract does not have any language that prohibits agreements longer than 3 years. You can do longer agreements that are longer than 3 years. There is some language about agreements when the contract expires. The thing to keep in mind, though, is that certain manufacturers will not agree to maintenance agreements that go beyond 3 years. And also, even if you're going to look at entering into an agreement that goes for more than 3 years, there are several things you have to think about, such as what's the price going to be, what are the updates, what potential new implementation or services will I need, what are going to be my potential, other investments that could affect this. So it is allowable on the manufacturer's umbrella, but you need to think about certain things, and it may not be something you're able to do based on other factors. And now I'm going to hand it off to Jamie.
So generally, if software is a component of a contract, both annual and multi-year licenses can be obtained. Next slide. In the event multi-year licenses aren't offered for any given contract or an authorized user is unable to procure a multi-year license due to budgetary reasons or otherwise, authorized users still have the ability to procure software licenses through the contracts rather than issuing their own bid. Software licenses are specific to the product offerings on any given contract. Some examples of contracts include Award 23260 for books, serials, databases, and library resource management products, in particular database products, electronic publications, and library resource management and research support products. Our STEM contract for science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and science and laboratory educational supplies and equipment. And our advanced scientific equipment instruments. Software licenses, again, are specific to the product offerings on a specific contract. Next slide. Now I'll talk about some useful resources for local governments. We provided a link here to the OSC Local Government Management Guide, which provides guidance on seeking competition and procurement at the state and local level. A link to procurement for municipalities OGS webpage, which provides procurement guidance for municipalities and local governments, including piggybacking, conducting your own procurement, and cooperative purchasing. Next slide. A link to General Municipal Law, Section 103, which covers statutory requirements for advertising for bids and offers and let-in contracts. And we're including contact information for our Procurement Services customer service team, where you can reach out for information regarding other buyer resources, and if customer services can't help you directly, they can certainly put you in touch with someone at Procurement Services with more expertise in the area in which you're seeking information. Next slide.
Thanks, Jamie and Joe. We received a number of questions about locating OGS contracts and products, and Wendy, Melissa, and Kylisha will be addressing some of these. The first question, rather, it's a comment, is finding contracts on the website is confusing, not sure of the best way to navigate for commodities.
So the Procurement Services contract site allows you to search by contract type, commodity, service, or technology, or by keyword for product type. To get to this page that I'm showing here, use the procurement dropdown from the OGS homepage, which is ogs.ny.gov, and click on contracts and then on search contract awards. And then you would use the search box at the top to put in keywords. I put in bus here as an example. Also on this page, there's 2 PDFs right at the bottom of the page that can be searched by keywords. Just open up the document, and then you would hit Control F on your keyboard to get the search box. There's one PDF that's a complete listing of all statewide contracts. You can search that by contractor name or contract description. And then there's another PDF, which is an alphabetical listing of all awards sorted by description. And there you can search by product type. We also had a class earlier this week on navigating the OGS Procurement Services website and locating contracts. That session will be available on our website after GovBuy, so be sure to check that out for some more detailed information. Next slide. And the question?
The question is, will there be another application like the e-marketplace in the future that allows agencies to search for and/or purchase items?
So for those that don't know, the e-marketplace will be decommissioned effective October 19th, and we will not be replaced in its current form. For more information about that, go to the link below, which will give you information about the decommissioning and the e-marketplace in general. For the future, OGS is currently looking into developing an e-procurement system for bidding and posting our contracts, and that may include some functionality that allows contract price lists to be searched and items to be purchased, but that is just in the infancy of being developed, and you'll have to stay tuned for some more information. Next slide. Pricing for the 6 OGS awards that were available via the marketplace can be accessed at the reward pages on the OGS website. Just go to our Procurement Services Contracts website that we just looked at and search for award there. And products from each of the 3 preferred sources that are currently listed on the e-marketplace are available on the preferred sources website. Links to their sites are available on the Procurement Services Preferred Sources webpage. Next slide.
Thank you, Wendy. Melissa, the next question is yours. Would it be possible to leave expired contract awards viewable, or at least the contract updates portion of the award? It can be helpful to review the contract updates of expired awards for guidance on how to move forward.
So yes, currently there are a number of awards that are still viewable past the expiration date. However, OGS is working on an expired contract award site page. Next slide. The link is active and is located on the OGS Centralized Contracts page, right under the Search Contract Awards button. But since it's still in development, we do recommend checking the website periodically for updates on this. Next slide.
Thanks, Melissa. Kylisha, the last question about locating OGS contracts and products is yours. And it is, how do we find information on how to use each of the OGS centralized contracts? Authorized user requirements can differ across each.
So many of the OGS contracts do include a frequently asked questions, how to use, or similar document, which is created to aid authorized users in using the specific contract. The FAQ, as it's commonly called, and the how to use provide answers to common concerns and provide general instructions on how to use the specific contract, including info such as the steps and considerations for bidding or ordering. The FAQ, how to use, and similar aids can be found on the landing page for awards that include them. Please do keep in mind, though, that these documents complement but do not replace or supersede the terms and conditions of the contract, and so it is still the responsibility of the authorized user to familiarize themselves with the contract before proceeding to use the contract. Also, authorized users may contact the contract manager for an award if an FAQ or how to use is not available, or if they just simply need additional information. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Kylisha. We did receive a question that falls under the other procurement methods title, and Joe is going to talk us through that question, which is, discuss experiences with Amazon Business and how we can use Amazon Business and be in compliance with purchasing laws and regulations.
Thank you. So on the manufacturer's umbrella contract, both Amazon Business, Microsoft Azure Marketplace, and similar offerings cannot be used to acquire third-party products and services. The reason is that when you use those platforms, you end up passing through the third-party entity's terms and conditions, which we don't allow in the manufacturer's umbrella contract. So as an example, if you were to buy a piece of financial management software on Amazon Business or anything, you would be subject to that third party's terms and conditions, whereas the umbrella contract specifically prohibits that and requires everything to be priced, warranted, maintained, and stood behind by the contractor. If unused separately on your own contract, on your own, using not using a centralized contract, you go to use Amazon Business or the, say, Azure Marketplace, you still have to comply with the procurement statutes. So you still have to be mindful of the $50,000 advertising if for most state agencies, for discretionary, and locals, obviously more generally it's $20,000. So you still have to be under general municipal law. So you still need to comply with those, and you can't use their offerings as a means to circumvent that. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Joe. We're going to switch gears some now. We received some questions about green products, and Jill McCabe is going to address these. The first green question for Jill is, has there been any discussion about requiring that vendors awarded state contracts self-identify items that meet Executive Order 22, known as EO 22, Green New York specifications and standards?
As Wendy mentioned earlier, and for anyone that's been following OGS's P&S updates, you know that eMarketplace is being decommissioned next month. And the e-marketplace does have some items that have been identified with green or environmentally friendly icons, but they will be going away when the e-marketplace is decommissioned. However, OGS is working toward implementing an e-procurement platform, and one of the topics we're discussing is the ability to identify items or price lists that are compliant with EO22 specs. This plan is still in the early development stage. OGS does encourage its contractors to identify green items on their current price lists whenever possible. If we are made aware of these green items, we bring attention to them on our contract documents. Because contractors self-identify their products as green, OGS recommends that it is best practice to ensure that these identified items are in fact green. It's okay to ask a contractor to confirm the product meets NY Executive Order 22. In other words, buyers are advised to beware. Next slide.
Jill, we have another green question for you, which is, what agencies or entities lead the way in tracking green purchasing and associated compliance? It would be really helpful to set a detailed webinar digging into this topic.
Currently, Green NY Council members do not have any access to this data. However, the executive order mandates that the council develop an annual survey that reports on the progress made toward achieving directives and goals, the effectiveness of procurement specs, efforts to advance environmental justice, and specific sustainability and energy efficiency projects that have been implemented and their effectiveness. So stay tuned. I'm sure we will be hearing more from the Green NY Council in the future. There was a session yesterday on Go Green, and that presentation will be viewable along with all the other sessions in the next coming weeks. I encourage you to view that recording if you didn't attend the live version. Next slide.
Thanks, Jill. Our next few slides relate to some specific contract details. And the first question goes to Melissa. Melissa, is OGS looking to go out to bid for electrical and other industrial supplies? The contractor we usually buy from has now dropped off.
Yes, there is a new award for industrial supplies in place as of March of this year, which runs through March of 2028. And currently there are 9 contractors. However, we do anticipate adding a few additional contractors in the coming weeks. Some of the categories include building supplies, electrical equipment, HVAC, power tools, and lighting. This new award also includes lighting products that were on the recently expired Environmentally Preferable Lighting Award. The contractors do offer lighting on industrial supplies, may have included a column on their price list to self-identify which EP lighting standard the item meets. And as Jill has mentioned previously, you may want to contact the contractor if you have any questions. Next slide, please.
Melissa, this next question's for you as well. Will OGS Procurement Services be working with the OGS Office of Language Access, or OLA, to develop the next language services contract? We believe it would serve the best interests of the state to have OLA pre-screen vendors prior to them being awarded.
Yes, in a nutshell, OGS Procurement did actually work with the previous statewide language access coordinator and others on the current award. However, now that OLA is fully established, we do anticipate working with them on any new solicitation and award for language services moving forward. Next slide.
Thanks, Melissa. This next question is for Kailisha, and that question is, if a distributor is giving us non-authorized quotes for award 22876, which is the IT umbrella contract distributor-based, specifically for cloud products, is there somewhere we should be reporting this?
Yes. So this question was asked specifically for distributor. However, the answer does apply across all contracts. We recommend that authorized users first try communicating with contractors to clarify any questions or issues. However, where no resolution can be reached or the issues continue, authorized users should contact the OGS contract manager with questions and concerns. Next slide, please.
Thank you. The next few questions are for Joe Better with a little bit of commentary mixed in from the Business Services Center. Joe, if a manufacturer on award 22802, which is the IT umbrella contract manufacturer base, assembles standalone cloud products that they cannot warrant pass-through terms on, claiming it's now their own branded product, could they still be considered a manufacturer per the definition of this contract?
So short answer is no. Because they are still passing through the third party's terms and conditions, that means they don't meet the definition of a manufacturer for purposes of the manufacturer umbrella, and it can't be offered. It's sort of similar to the same reason why we don't allow, for example, the use of the Amazon Business or Azure Marketplace, because again, we don't want anyone passing through third party terms and conditions. It has to be under the contract terms and conditions. Next slide.
Great. Ready for another question, Joe?
Yep.
Okay. So this question is, I'm looking to acquire a cloud solution on award 22802 IT umbrella contract manufacturer base. Can you please explain how the data categorization and data risk level work?
Yes. So whenever an AU goes out to issue an RFQ for Lot 3 Cloud, they need to do a data categorization. And as part of that, it will result in them classifying and setting in the RFQ a data risk level, either low, moderate, or high. Now, separately, as part of the centralized contract, OGS Procurement Services approves contractors for low, moderate, or high risk data on their contracts. And what that means is that contractor and any resellers under that contractor can only bid on the data risk levels that they are approved for. So if an AU issues an RFQ and sets it at, for example, high risk data, the only entities that can respond to that are contractors and the resellers under contractors where the contractor has high risk data on its contract. They can't bid and they can't be awarded an authorized user agreement. There are provisions for contract modifications where a contractor can request that OGS approve an increase in their data risk level, but that has to be approved before the due date of the RFQ. Now I'm going to hand it off to the BSC on this as well.
Thanks, Joe. So for BSC customers, we are reviewing the risk level on all cloud RFQs. This includes agency-performed RFQs that come through the BSC on a purchase order, and this also includes cloud RFQ requests that our buy desk receives. And again, we are ensuring that the risk level identified on these RFQs is in accordance with the contract being used, like Joe spoke to.
And just if I could weigh in too, the other thing I just want to add on this is that we do this because there's a real risk here associated with cyber. You have to think of this kind of as Russian roulette, where whenever you do anything with cyber, there's that potential that you're going to squeeze the trigger and there's a bullet in there, which is cyber incident. So there was just a cyber incident affecting New York City hospitals back on September 6th. So it's important that we have adequate protections in the contract for AUs, and that's why we require this data categorization and the data risk level. So, next slide, please.
I think this is yours as well, Joe?
Yep. It's a continuation of, that's continuous. Next slide again, please. Yep.
All right. So, Joe, are there any recommendations on how to handle additional terms and conditions submitted with a vendor's bid response under the umbrella contracts?
Yep. So I'm going to address a little bit of this as general and specific to the umbrella for all of our contracts, and some of it specific to umbrella. All of our contracts have an Appendix B modification of contract terms in them, and so authorized users have to comply with the provisions of that requirement. Now, specific to umbrella, There are provisions that you may be able to change as part of that certain provisions of the umbrella contract if the contractor can demonstrate to the user that it results in an overall better transaction to change the provision. However, you can't change certain provisions of the umbrella contract like Appendix A and or the insurance provisions, because those are what we call carve-outs. The other thing is that OGS are going to be putting out more information on additional or alternate terms and conditions for umbrella to help provide more guidance for AUs, contractors, and resellers. Next slide.
Okay, Joe, here's another question for you. Can a completed contract performance report be emailed? It states fax or mail on the actual form. How often are these reviewed, and when is it recommended to utilize the form?
So again, I'm going to answer this for generally. Yes, you can email those. You would email them to the customer service link that was presented a few slides back. In terms of when you would submit those, this would be when you, the authorized user, are unable to, the contractor has not performed and you've been unable to resolve the issues with the contractor. When you immediately, as soon as that's submitted to customer service, it's then sent to the team, and Procurement Services immediately looks into the situation. We will reach out usually to both the contractor and the authorized user to try to get more information and help resolve the situation. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Joe. And just two more questions for now. No promises, though. So for a change of pace, we have a question for Joe. The IT manufacturer RFQ for low-dollar items does not receive bids because the contract price doesn't cover shipping charges or is too low in general. What's the best way to proceed?
So we would say that you would first start to look and see if there's a way that you could potentially aggregate your potential purchases with a given contractor, given manufacturer, or for similar items, including over multiple years. So that might get you some raise the volume and value of the transaction to a point where more people, manufacturers or resellers would be interested in bidding. It may be, however, that it just isn't economically feasible for any of these, on umbrella, any of the manufacturers or resellers to respond. So in that case, we would suggest you look at possibly using discretionary purchasing as an option. Now, if you use discretionary purchasing, you have to follow the applicable statutes and your internal guidelines going forward. But it is an option if you're unable to get any results on the manufacturer umbrella contract. Next slide, please.
Great. Thanks, Joe. Let's talk about Comet. With regards to the Comet portal, are all manufacturers and resellers trained on utilizing this platform? We have noticed fewer responses being received through the portal versus RFQs sent by email with the RFQ documents.
So when we initially stood up Comet, we offered training to all of the current contractors and their resellers. And for all subsequently awarded contractors, we've provided them with an instruction guide and the ability, if they need to come back and ask us for more training. It isn't mandatory that you use Comet for RFQs. It's up to an agency to determine if they want to accept it or not. An agency could require that the RFQs all go through Comet, but just be aware that if you put that requirement in and someone doesn't submit it through Comet, that could be a material breach, and you would then have to really decide how you want to proceed on that. So the way I would say is look at your internal procurement guidelines on what you are and aren't allowed that are comfortable in doing, and decide how you want to accept RFQs accordingly. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Joe. All right, you can take a breather now. This next question is for Jamie Nussbaum. Jamie, is there an estimated time frame for a replacement office supplies award?
Yes, there is. So a new solicitation is being finalized right now and will be issued shortly. And we anticipate the new contract will be in place in 3 to 6 months, pending all necessary approvals, including the Attorney General and the Office of the State Comptroller.
Thank you. Well, thank you to my partners here in Procurement Services for answering all the questions that we received ahead of this session. We may, if we have time at the end, go through the chat and answer some of those questions, but right now I'm going to pivot our conversation over to our partners at the Business Services Center. Sue Ann Hadley is going to give us a brief introduction of the Buy Desk, and then we've got a few questions for her.
Thank you. So for those on the call who may be unfamiliar with the Buy Desk, I'll be doing a brief introduction before we jump into the BSC questions. So the Buy Desk assists BSC customers with New York State purchasing requirements. This includes researching and locating items and services through preferred sources, centralized contracts, as well as open market. For example, say a BSC customer writes into the Buy Desk and is asking for items A, B, and C. We do the research and reply with what we're able to find. We will also include additional requirements that need to be completed based on the dollar amount for your purchase. Next, we also complete the RFQ process on behalf of our customer agencies, and this is under certain centralized contracts. We do the RFQs for administrative services and language services, both the manufacturer and distributor IT umbrella contracts, trash removal, and security guards. We do work closely with procurement services on any issues that may require their guidance. So we will either obtain the information needed directly, or we will connect the end user with the correct contact at procurement services so those conversations can be done directly. Circling back to open market, if we confirm an item is not available through preferred source or centralized contract, we can also obtain open market quotes on behalf of BSC customers. Next slide. And then please feel free to check out the Buy Desk page on the BSC website for more information about the services that the Buy Desk offers. Next slide.
Thank you, Sue Ann. We've got some questions. There's actually 3 questions that I'm going to just give you all at once for your answer. So the first question is, SUNY was recently told that the Buy Desk option was not available to us for OGS centralized contract required mini bids. Is there any talk of that changing? And then also, can the OGS Buy Desk team assist non-BSC customers? And finally, how would a CUNY school that is governed by the state utilize the Business Services Center?
So currently, Buy Desk services are only available to BSC customers. We are, however, in the process of expanding our Buy Desk team and our services to more than just our existing customers. This is part of the OGS strategic plan that's currently under development, so we do hope to be able to serve a larger capacity in the near future. And when we are able, we will definitely be sending out advertisements, announcements, and notifications once complete. Next slide.
Thank you, Sue Ann. Phil Reed is going to answer the next set of Buy Desk questions for us. Phil, let's see, discussion on aggregation and how to best determine what or when items should be aggregated or not.
Thank you, Jennifer. This question could apply to numerous amount of topics, but a lot of the questions that we get, we believe that it mostly resembled, the discretionary threshold and how to aggregate all your purchases, or when not to aggregate your purchases in counting to the discretionary threshold limit. So I do want to refer to the law, the State Finance Law 163, where agencies need to take into account the aggregate amount of purchase orders for the same commodity service made within a 12-month period, and factored in the total threshold of $85,000, which is what we call the discretionary limit. Now, I do want to point out that $85,000 is for the BSC, for purchase orders that go through the BSC and OGS. So if you're not a customer of the BSC, more than likely your threshold is $50,000 for a discretionary limit, and there might be other rules that may apply for OSC approval, especially for SUNY and CUNY. So next slide, please. So I do want to make clear what that 12-month period entails. It's all your aggregate purchases within the last 365 days. So That's based off, today and 365 days ago. It's not based off a fiscal year. So that's what you need to take into account for how much you've spent on the same commodity or service within that 12-month period. And in terms of aggregating too, you should not be splitting up procurements to satisfy this threshold. So basically, if you do intend on purchasing a service and a commodity together, or maybe this is part of your procurement of a project, right, you should be factoring all of that into one purchase. You should not be splitting up that into multiple purchase orders just to satisfy that threshold as well. So any further questions on that? Let us know. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Phil. And what is the BSC's involvement in entering OC contracts for customer agencies? This one's for you too, Phil.
Thank you. So as the new law that came January, OSC approval is now required on purchase orders over $200,000 utilizing centralized contracts. So for our BSC customers, when we receive a purchase order and it meets that threshold, or we have a POC in bringing that, or purchase order change notice bringing that threshold over $200,000, we're performing that OC process for you to get that OSC approval. So we look at the criteria, we make sure all the documents are gathered, all the questions are answered. We create the contract in SFS for approval. We upload all the documents in EDSS. And once we get approval from OSC, we can then dispatch that purchase order. If OSC has any additional questions that we cannot answer on our own directly, we will reach out to that buyer or that agency contact to get the answer, and then we will facilitate the conversation with OSC to get that approval. Once that is done, we do attach all that to the procurement record in SFS and dispatch the purchase order on its way. Next slide, please.
Yep.
So, if you need any assistance or something, or if you're not a BSC customer, you should be contacting your contract unit for assistance on, how to get your purchase order through. So that's it.
Thank you, Phil, very much. Thanks to our partners at the BSC for answering the questions submitted prior to this session, and we still have some time, and we've got a few questions in the chat window, so I will read them off and raise your hand if you're going to answer it. Our first question is, are there any plans to include installation on the furniture contract and any plans to renew the playground contract?
So yes, the new solicitation for furniture was let this year, and that is award 23295. Installation is included. If you go to the bid document, you will see in section 2.2.2 installation that bidders do have the option of offering installation, which we charge an additional cost represented by a percentage above the net price charged, and that charge can be different percentage rate downstate or upstate. We are currently reviewing those bids and hope to have awards in place by the end of the year. As for playground, I believe Wendy can take that for us. So the playground equipment, there's actually 2 awards that expired related to that. There's the park and recreation equipment, which expired in June, and the outdoor and site furniture, including picnic tables, which expired in April. And unfortunately, no, there's currently no plans to replace those contracts.
Thank you both. This next question is for our partners at the Buy Desk, or at the Business Services Center Buy Desk, which is the Buy Desk available to local governments? We went over this a little bit, but we're just going to reiterate if you don't mind.
Yeah, no problem. So the Buy Desk is currently only available to BSC customers. So one way to think about that is if your purchases currently come through the BSC, you would qualify as a BSC customer. But again, we are looking to expand our services in the near future and hopefully get that announcement out sooner rather than later.
Thank you. Joe, I think this one is for you. I could be wrong. What do we do if a vendor on the IT manufacturer contract changes some of the terms on the request for quote cover page template? This was done by a vendor that does not have resellers and was the sole respondent.
Okay, so this is basically goes back to the additional or alternate terms and conditions. So part of the guidance, first I'll say part of the guidance we're going to be putting out is to mainly going to address situations where first where a contractor or manufacturer has more than 5 or more resellers. Even though in a situation with where you only have, say, one sole respondent, we would encourage them to, if there was a Q&A period, to try to submit the proposed additional or alternate terms and conditions during the Q&A period. If there wasn't, they do have the right to propose additional or alternate terms and conditions as part of the RFQ response. However, there's a couple things. One, they can't condition it, so they can't say you must accept our terms or we're not going to work. Second is that even they can't change any of the carve-out terms and conditions, and they also need to, and ultimately they have to demonstrate why those additional alternate terms and conditions are in the result, are overall in the best interest of the authorized user for that transaction and results in a more advantageous transaction. So there's a lot there I just condensed in, but that's kind of high altitude how the additional alternate terms would be handled in that situation. And you also, I'd say, and you, the authorized user, must affirmatively agree to that. So if you decline it, they can't try to say, oh, but, we attached this. Like, no, you actually have to affirmatively say, yes, we agree to that. So, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Let's see. The next question is, it is hard to find items on many contracts as the descriptions tend to be very poor and do not actually describe in common terms what the product is. Are these descriptions going to be edited to be more user-friendly? And I believe this was going to Melissa Gretton.
Yes.
Thank you.
So I would suggest reaching out to the contract manager for the contract that you're having trouble with, and they could potentially work with the contractor to update their price list to give better descriptions for each of their products.
Thank you, Melissa. Our next question in the chat is, when will OGS have a new contract for office supplies? Jamie, can you remind us?
Sure. So we touched on this earlier. A new solicitation is getting ready to issue a new solicitation shortly, and anticipate a new contract will be in place in 3 to 6 months pending approval by the Attorney General and the Office of the State Comptroller.
Excellent. Thank you. The next question is, can we use the GSA contract for something that is not on state contract?
I can take that.
Jill McCabe will take this question.
So yes, state agencies have the ability to piggyback specific, certain, I believe they call them schedule contracts at GSA. And if you're a state agency, the protocol is that you first, you need to get approval from the Office of General Services. So you would fill out what we call the contract use request form, and that's on our website with the whole process actually. You would fill that out answering all the questions that it asks, I believe it's 3 pages, and then you would submit it to our office. We would assign it to one of our teams, and basically what we're looking for is just to make sure that it isn't a service or a commodity that we already have on a centralized contract. This is still subject to any oversight approvals like OSC, so just be mindful of that. For local entities, yes, the general municipal law over the past few years has expanded so that you have the ability to use not only cooperative contracts, but you can now use best value as a method. So although OGS does not approve local entity piggybacks like we do for New York State entities and or SUNY CUNY or New York City. We can assist you if you have a question about the process and how to go about piggybacking. So the answer is yes. All folks, both state and non-state, have the ability, not just GSA, but other contracts as well. And I believe there was a very in-depth session earlier today regarding piggybacking. So, please refer to that session when these go online in the next 2 weeks.
Thanks, Jill. I just want to make a comment that I appreciate how you all in the chat are supporting one another in the pain that is all of the acronyms. And someone said poof, brain overload, and I was trying to figure out what the poof acronym stood for.
Actually, I have a question for our group. We do have an internal document that is definitions of acronyms commonly used in procurement, which I guess we don't have posted anywhere in the world on our website, but maybe that's a good takeaway that we could put that up somewhere.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah.
Good idea. Yep.
We can probably even add to it.
Thank you for that suggestion. The next question that we have in the chat is, do we need to get multiple quotes for items on OGS contract when the total cost is a specific amount?
Well, that would be contract specific. Would suggest that you definitely visit the contract terms, pricing, how to use documents as we discussed earlier, because that would be ultimately up to the contract itself.
Relating to what Kylisha is saying, not all contracts have a mini bid component in them. Many of your IT contracts will, and that's simply because when we award the contracts at the first level, they may not be competitive. The competition comes in at the second level. The first level, when we accept bids, is basically determining whether the vendors meet the minimum quals that we set forth. So as Kai said, you would need to look at the actual process that's required for the contract. More often than not, I think you will find that OGS contracts do not require the mini bid component. However, as an agency or an entity using our contracts, you are welcome to get multiple quotes from any of the vendors on our contract. And I believe there may be a caveat for schools. I know at one time, even though a school was using one of our food contracts, the federal government was requiring that they still do a quote, get 3 quotes. So that was a few years back. Just be mindful of that if you are a school out there receiving federal funding.
Thank you.
I don't know if you mind if I add to that, Jill, but I do want to make people aware of something common that we get for OSC approval in terms of getting multiple quotes off an OGS contract. You know, even though RFQs may not be required on certain contracts, there is some language where, you know, in the how-to where agencies should seek the best pricing off the contract. And, you know, that may require multiple quotes for the same items to get that best pricing, or, you know, negotiating with the vendor to achieve best pricing. So I just want to make people aware that that is a question that we commonly get from OSC as justification on why you're making a purchase with a specific vendor, even though that language specifically says it's not required on the contract.
Thank you. Next question is for Melissa Gretton. Will there be a new furniture contracts ready to take over the ones that expire in December?
Well, we received 148 bids, and we are working our way through those surely. It is our intention to have new awards in place, whether it will be all or partial. So I suggest that you please check the website and also contact the contract manager closer to December to check on the status of our awards.
Great. That's a lot of bids. Thank you. This one's for Jamie. Will school and art supplies be part of the office supplies? If not, when do you anticipate that contract to be in place?
So no, the school and art supplies and the miscellaneous office supplies will not be combined. We anticipate a new award for the school and art supplies within the next several months.
Thank you. All right. And on to our next question. Oh, we actually do have the acronyms used in procurement posted to the OGS website. Aren't we brilliant? Thank you so much for showing that to us and pointing it out.
We definitely will take a look at that because
Yeah.
I can think of a few right now that are fairly new.
Yeah.
And we can add to that. So thank
Yeah.
you for sharing our own document.
That's great.
Appreciate it.
At least you're checking using the website, correct?
Right,
Yes.
right.
Yes. Is this I think this might be a question for Wendy?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a contract on natural gas and electric supply?
So there is currently a contract for natural gas. However, with the caveat that it's unfortunately going away. Let me look at the expiration date for that. May already be gone.
I believe it was extended through November 30th. This is Emily.
Right. We did extend only for a few select locations until November 30th. The rest of the people using the contract were asked to return to the utilities. So those expired August 31st. If you're not part of the select, there's about 5, which were some docks locations and Department of Health, Wadsworth, and OMH, Hutchings Psychiatric Center. We are doing a procurement to extend those out for a year, so they will go out till November of '24. The rest of the contracts expired August 31st.
Thank you. This next question, I believe, is for the furniture contract, and we're going to get back to you on this question, which is
20915. I'm not sure which one that is. I just did a search for that.
okay. The question was, if using the 20915 contract and the total dollar is $6,000, would you need multiple bids?
That's the group number.
I was just thinking that. Thank you.
Oh, 20915 is the group number. Okay. We were all looking under the award.
The award is 23109. You do not, there is no requirement in the current furniture award to get multiple quotes. I would suggest that you do if you find that multiple contractors have the same exact item, though.
Thank you. Okay, let's see. Some questions I might have missed. Oh, a question for the BSC is, what is the acronym OC? Our participant searched online and could not find OC. She knows it's related to something with OSD, but what does OC mean, Phil and Sue Ann?
Oh, it's a great question. OC is not actually an acronym. It is a contract prefix that you use when entering in an SFS contract, and that signifies that contract is one that you're entering is one that is for a purchase order for approval to OSC. So it doesn't actually stand for anything. It's just a signifier to know what type of contract you are pushing to OSC for approval. Other than that, it's a show from the early 2000s, and I'm not sure what the acronym stands for there either.
I feel like it's Orange County, but I could be wrong.
Somebody in the chat actually thinks
Order change?
So if you want more information on the acronym OC, one of our team members, Christine Swoboda, put a link in so you can have some more information about contract numbering. Interesting. Thank you, Christine. Okay, I'm going back to the chat to see if we have any other questions. Oh, we do have a number of questions. Great. Okay. This is for the IT distributor contract. If all the vendors on the IT distributor contract bid more than you want to pay, how to deal with that?
Well, the first thing I would do is make sure that you're following your entity's purchasing rules and guidelines. You do have the option to have conversations with all of these bidders. Possibly there's something about your bid that's bringing your results back higher than you expected. But other than that, those bids, you know, they come in as they are. They would just, you would accept them or not. But yeah, I would say first maybe go back and right size your bid.
Okay. I see some questions and answers going on in the chat between folks, which is great, very helpful. Okay, I believe this one is for Joe. Are there still pending vendors being added to the IT manufacturer umbrella contract for the second recruitment, and will there be more recruitments in adding vendors in the future?
So there are still some vendors who submitted bids for periodic recruitment 2 who are under review and may get awarded. We are reaching nearing the end of the review process, so we don't anticipate it will be going on for much longer. In terms of future periodic recruitments, I can't say one way or the other. However, I would just, to give everyone kind of an idea of timing, the umbrella contracts have to be extended again in 2025 for 5 years, and that's the last extension that we have available. So at that point, we would have to start thinking about a replacement contract. So I can't say if we would or wouldn't do a third periodic recruitment, but the timing, it would be very difficult looking at it over the next few years for us to do a third periodic recruitment. So thanks.
Thank you. We have another question in the chat. Could you briefly discuss if OGS has any contractual language that directs municipalities to use specific third-party financing company for capital purchases, such as NCL government capital, or is this decision ultimately up to local municipalities to decide?
Do you want me to take it, or I think I can?
Please do.
That'd be great.
Great.
So the short answer is we don't have any contract for anyone to do third-party capital financing. The one thing I would mention is there is some language in in Appendix B that potentially allows you, if it becomes a custom-developed product, to get third-party financing. So I don't remember the specific. I think it's like Appendix B, Clause 7. I can't remember. It's near 68, I believe, but I can't remember. It's near the end of Appendix B. When you have the contractor develop a custom developed product, which means that you earn the intellectual property. So there may be some financing that's involved in that. But otherwise, in terms of doing capital costs, that's something that the AUs are entirely responsible for.
Thanks, Joe. Next question, we need some more information. If you could add it to the bottom of the chat. The question is, can you provide timelines for fuel contracts in Westchester County? And we'd love to do that, but we need to know which fuel you're asking for. And our next question, if a vendor has a state contract for a service, but the contract cannot be used for a specific project for whatever reason, do agencies still have to hold that vendor to the pricing set by their contract when reviewing their open market quote?
I don't know. Anyone want to?
Jamie, you want to take that one?
Sure, I would say no. If it's not an apples-to-apples comparison, then you would not have to hold them to their contract pricing.
Thank you.
So back to the fuels.
Yes.
They clarified heating oil. So we currently have 2 contracts that both expire November 30th. And we are working on a replacement for both of those. We've already held our bid opening. We're reviewing 12 bids. we will definitely have that in place by November 30th. That's the goal. So look for the new contracts December 1st, barring any unforeseen circumstances.
Great. Thank you. I think this one is for you, Jamie. Other than the office paper contract, what contract is WB Mason under?
I'm not aware of any other contracts they're currently under right now. They were a school and art supplies contract, however, that contract expired on the 8th of this month. So it's just a recycled copy paper, less a truckload.
Thank you. Our next question is it true the New York State Procurement Guidelines dated September 2023 is now available? This replaces the 2014 edition. I just found it, and I asked this question in one of the webinars this week and was told it was still being worked on. This is quite a timing issue, isn't it, Jill?
Yeah, so, yeah, excuse me while I go do a cartwheel. We are very, very happy. We've been working, there's a work group, a subcommittee group that stems from the Procurement Council. And that work group was tasked with rewriting the procurement guidelines from, as the question says, 2014. Several attempts have been made along the way to update these guidelines. And I can tell you that when you have a lot of cooks in the kitchen, it's very difficult to come to terms with what your interpretation of a guideline and or a reg or a law is. So I'm very happy to say we did what I believe is full consensus was achieved, I think, for our guidelines yesterday at the last Procurement Council meeting. You won't see it up on the website. I wish I could give you a reference as to when you'll see it. I was just having this conversation before I came into this session, and we were looking to stage it, stage the document so that we could get it out as soon as our Chief Procurement Officer interim, Moses Camia, as soon as we get the okay. So yes, they are going to be coming very soon, but you probably are not going to see them this week, maybe next week. It's really hard to say, but by all means, you can keep checking in with us, keep checking the site, but they are on their way.
Yay! All right. Oh, someone just posted a link, the OGS website with the guidelines. So are they, maybe they're posted already?
A little bit nerve-wracking because I said no. Okay, we'll take a look.
All right.
They are live.
Okay. We have a furniture contract question, Melissa. For furniture purchases, thinking about best purchasing practices, when ordering, are people having multiple managers sign off on these types of purchases for audit purposes?
I guess it would depend upon your internal procedures. OGS does not require that, so I would check with your supervisors and managers internally.
Excellent, thank you. It looks like one of our partners looked up, we have a contract for PPE and cleaning supplies contracts that has WB Mason on, so you might want to check those.
Yep.
I'm sorry, it was the industrial and commercial supplies, not cleaning supplies.
Oh, I'm sorry, industrial and commercial supplies. Yep. Thank you. And I'm just looking through to see if I missed anything. Thank you. Someone said we need more of this. Hopefully this is a helpful session. Let's see. And then someone asked for a refresher on the status of the art supply bid again.
So I would plan for early 2024 for a new contract.
Okay. We still have a few minutes if anyone wants to put any more questions in the chat. We are being thanked for all of our hard work and appreciated. That's always wonderful. Thank you, everyone, for your attention and for your participation. Jamie, I'll let you take this last one.
3 to 6 months for the new office supplies contract.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. We have a question. Oh, it's not a question, it's just a thank you. Oh, what are the uniforms that people are wearing, and can we purchase things like that?
I got a whole drawer.
Yeah.
We'll be happy to keep.
So these are actually Gov by shirts that we have, OGS procurement staff has worn over the years at our previous in-person events. Some years we just wear the previous year. As you saw very quickly, some of us are in professional attire. Others of us dug in our closet and picked out our favorite, or at least clean, Gov by shirt. Mine is very old, and I think Kai's is as well. Yeah, it even has the old
This is version 1,
OGS
I've
logo.
got version 2 in my drawer.
Nice. So I don't believe that these are available for purchase.
I think they were embroidered, though, by one of the preferred sources.
Yes, I was just going to say that we actually have, when we buy these shirts, and there's approximately 100 staff members here in procurement, when we buy these shirts, we buy them in bulk, and they are embroidered, if not the materials themselves. I'm not quite sure where that comes from, the shirts themselves, but our preferred sources do the work for us. And some of the other things that we also get to supplement, you know, the pens and things. So we do go through preferred sources to get what we can. But thanks for asking the question.
Thank you. You have us until 3:30, so we're just going to keep on answering questions as they come in. This question is, I believe it's either Kailisha or Joe. How do I determine if OGS has a contract for a particular service or IT item? The search does not give any results, but when I reach out to BuyDesk, they are able to give suggestions. So for software, et cetera.
Do you want to start, Kailisha, or do you want me to?
I can take the floor.
Okay. So for the manufacturer umbrella, the first thing that you'll want, if you know who the actual software manufacturer, I'll use the word manufacturer, you may, you know, call it software developer, but if you know who that entity is, the manufacturer umbrella is awarded to manufacturers. So that could potentially help you to find a particular type of software. Now, if you either don't know a specific manufacturer, or if you're frankly just trying to find a general, there's a couple things you could do. One is you could take a look at the scope of the umbrella and see if you manufacture an umbrella, see if you think it falls in there. You know, if you reach out and say, hey, I'd like to buy a car, you're going to be out of luck on umbrella. But, you know, if you said, hey, I want to, you know, look at buying, I don't know, accounting software, there's a good chance that might be on manufacturer's umbrella. What you could then do is there's an RFI function in Comet, which would allow you to reach out to all of the contractors and resellers, say, awarded the particular lot, and I would say probably want to do software and cloud, and you could reach out to them and see if they have the type of offering you need. So there, you know, and when all else fails, there's a tool I like to use a lot, Google. Not endorsing them because they do have a contract, but I've been able to find tons of stuff on my own when I go out and do Google searches. That at least helps me to try to focus or at least get an idea of who might offer things. So there's kind of a few high altitude tricks to help you maybe search things you could do.
And even higher altitude, I'll add to that for IT contracts, because we have multiple awards. So manufacturer, that's definitely one way to go to search for that. But at even higher level, you can contact our customer services team and they can help you whittle down where you should be.
Nice. And there's a link to the email address for customer services in this deck, and I believe the phone number is in there as well. Thank you. I believe this is a question for Joe. Will there be an audiovisual contract at some point in the future, or were they encouraged to be added to the IT manufacturer contract?
So all of the old audiovisual contractors were made aware that their contracts are going to be consolidated into the umbrella contract. Many of them did submit proposals and were awarded. Some potentially have not, or some are still under review. But at this point, the audiovisual is under the manufacturer's umbrella contract.
Thank you. Oh, this is a good question. Is anyone using a specific business for signs like desk nameplates, court signs, etc., in plastic for court personnel? Oh, typically in plastic for court personnel. We might need to crowdsource that question.
That might be more of a question for the folks that are on the call, our audience.
Yeah.
If anybody's using it, feel free to type that in the chat. You guys have been very helpful. That's great.
Yep.
Here's a question I believe for Kylisha. Will you be doing any new ag buys for the IT contract? If so, can authorized users provide input on what they would like to see there?
So right now, we're preparing the next version of the PC IT Ag. That one is already in place. We definitely do reach out to our authorized users for feedback. We don't have anything necessarily in the works right now, but we're always looking for feedback. So if you have ideas about where you believe aggregation can happen, please let us know, and we always welcome and encourage authorized user feedback because we want to make sure that we're getting you what you need.
Thank you. Some of the folks online are saying SDVOB, WLC concepts, and perhaps Corecraft. Oh, and there was a suggestion. It would be great to get an AV maintenance contract.
Well, so you can acquire maintenance support under the manufacturer's umbrella contract. That is part of the scope for any for lot 1, lot 2, and I mean you could say I guess support for cloud. So they usually don't call it maintenance. So, but yeah, maintenance support of AV equipment that is on the umbrella contract is entirely allowable as long as the SKUs are on the contract.
Thank you. All right, here's another question, and I'm just going to keep asking them until Emily kicks us off. If possible, could you please discuss general process OGS uses to decide whether to adopt a national cooperative purchasing agreement like Sourcewell/NASPO? Also, any feedback you'd share with OEMs on generic timeline to switch from existing OGS-supported cooperative contract to a brand new one?
I'm not sure I understand the second part of that question, but for the first part, rather than get into now in the next 2 minutes, we did have a class on that, on piggybacking this morning, which was recorded and will be available on our website, and that had a lot of great information about the process of piggybacking and all the many things you need to think about.
That's great, thank you. Let's see. Is there a contract for auto scrubbing floor machines?
I might try the industrial supplies and equipment contract. I can't say for sure, though.
Okay.
Also, our garage equipment, vehicle lifts and garage equipment, the second part of that, the garage equipment, does have some automotive garage equipment. I'm not sure about that. I don't think that would be on there. But that's another place you could look.
Okay. Okay, Emily, in our last minute, do you see anything that I skipped
I do not. Oh, except I see one that just came in. Is there a contract for high voltage transformers?
That could also be industrial supplies and equipment. There is so much stuff on that contract. It's kind of a catch-all for many things that you don't know where else to look for.
Okay. Thank you. And then we have a question, a follow-up question on the AV maintenance answer provided. They only provide maintenance on products that are purchased from them. I think that was a question / comment.
So by they mean the contractor or the entity that holds the umbrella contract?
I believe so.
So, I mean,
yes.
there could be, I mean, there is some language about contract migration, but ultimately that may be a situation where you might have to look, depending on how, and again, I would need more information to answer it, but you may ultimately be in a situation where you might have to do your own potential contract there.
Is that a REMI thing, Jamie?
What?
AV maintenance?
I'm not sure that it is. You'd have to look at the contract. There is a pretty detailed list of scope of products and categories on that contract. You could definitely check the REMI contract to see if you can find anything that's on there. That's also a good place to look.
Yep.
There's one question about music equipment.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. I think I'm gonna call this one our last question, which is because it's 3:31. Let's see. Is there a contract for music equipment, meaning backline, speakers, mixers, etc.?
And that possibly could fall under manufacturer's umbrella. The way we consolidated AV in, there's a good chance that at least some of that equipment may be there. So I think it would be. So yeah, I think I would start with looking at manufacturer umbrella.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.